Mm. Mm-mm. I'm currently live streaming on my YouTube channel where I will be drawing. This blog will be deleted when the stream is over. I'm not playing video games, but I will be drawing and talking about stuff. You know, once people actually start coming in. Wonder why no one's coming in yet. Okay, there's one person. No, now they're gone. So what did I miss? I'm just. Hi, Queen Nemmer. I'm just trying to find a good reference image for Thomas Jefferson. That way I can draw him in my poetry club AU. I was hoping more people would come in because I wanted to talk about my Hamilton AU. That's cool fan art. I love how Thomas Jefferson is like so flamboyant. Like Thomas Jefferson is so extra in the musical Hamilton. Yeah, I'm just going to look at this one. Okay. I'm just kind of wondering what Jefferson would be wearing because this AU is centered in like obviously modern times. Hmm. What would you picture an extremely extra Virginian cocky shithead to wear? Yes, he was the third president of America, and his best friend James Madison was the fourth. Even though I don't really like Jefferson very much as a person, probably because I know things about him that make him kind of not very admirable in my eyes. Uh, I won't deny that I have a lot of fun with him in the musical. Jefferson in the musical, he's a very interesting can of worms. I lost it. I lost the picture. I think that'll work. But yeah, I like Thomas Jefferson. I just love his. I love how in the second act of Hamilton, he comes all up in the scene like, "So what did I miss? What did I miss?" He just comes in here performing this vaudeville-esque musical number. I'm gonna put my ring over here so it doesn't bother me. How are you doing, Queen Nemmer? Oh, there's 3 people in here. Pressed a wrong button. I'm gonna listen to Jefferson songs. I'm gonna put on What Did I Miss? Just his song is so freaking funny. I just can't get over it. Okay. Hey Miles. Oh, your mom's working night shifts? That sounds like fun. Those were the kinds of shifts my mom worked back when she was still working. Sorry. Pissed him off until we had a 2-party system. I highly recommend going to listen to Hamilton. Yeah. Oh boy, I'm off to a good start. Thomas Jefferson's coming home. Okay. So So far, I've got the basic head shape sketched. We're just vibing. Hi, Ayla. I don't know if I've ever met you before, but hi. Don't talk to Sally that way, Jefferson. I like the part in the song What Did I Miss when Jefferson mentions he sees James Madison red in the face, and initially you would think that that's because he's mad or something, and that's what I initially thought too, but I later found out that that was actually a reference to something about real life James Madison because if you guys don't know this, James Madison, our fourth president, he was a very, very sickly dude. He was just very, very sick, and the musical actually highlights this by having his actor in the musical carry around a rag, and like he's coughing constantly and all that. He's just basically a very sickly dude. He was like constantly sick, and I think he also had like some form of what we would now refer to as like epilepsy. I'm also making sure to make Jefferson really tall because Jefferson was tall in the musical. The actor who plays him, I think, is really tall, and I think Jefferson was actually pretty tall. I think he was like 6 foot something. Let me double check. How? Yeah, he was 6'2". Holy shit, Thomas Jefferson, you were freaking tall. Just looking something over right here. Well, that's just not right. You shouldn't ridicule someone because they have like epilepsy is something that I don't think you can cure. Like I think treatment can help, but as a whole it can't be cured. So that's not really something that you should be doing. You shouldn't be ridiculing someone for something that they can't really change. That's adorable. Oops, I didn't mean to get rid of my Chrome tab. I think James Madison was our shortest president. I don't remember how tall he was. I think he was like five something. Okay. I'm drawing Jefferson in a hoodie because I feel like it. That's good. That's good of you. That's exactly what a good friend is supposed to do. I'm trying to get better at drawing clothing. I think so far I'm doing a pretty good job. I think after I do just a bit more sketching, then I want to just talk about my Hamilton AU. I already know what I'm going to write on his sweater. Okay. I'm just really concentrating on writing these block letters. It's really funny. Thomas Jefferson's home. He's been off in Paris for so long. All right. So far, I think it's going pretty good. Just gonna put in some more details on the pants. I think actually no. I'm gonna have Jefferson wear sweatpants because I feel like it. There we go. That's what I have so far. This person really draws the Hamilton characters really well. Okay, so now I want to talk about my Hamilton AU a little bit. So I'm going to go to the Hamilton Amino, and I'm going to read you off the concepts for my AU because I have a couple of blogs explaining it. So here I go. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I like talking about this. So, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr are the founders of the Poetry Club, and they meet after school to do club activities. Not many join this club as opposed to other clubs, but they do have a few members, like John Laurens, Alexander's best friend, who doesn't really know all that much about poetry, but mostly just comes for the snacks. Angelica Schuyler, the newest member, she loves to write poems with spunk and personality and has a one sided crush on Alexander. Elizabeth, aka Eliza Schuyler, also a new member. She didn't really want to join because she doesn't like writing and isn't very good at it, but decides to stay for her sister's sake. And she has a crush on Alexander, and the feeling is mutual. And of course, some other characters. Alexander Hamilton, founder and president of the Poetry Club. He loves to write romantic and dramatic poems and is good friends with Aaron Burr, but also pisses him off from time to time. Yeah, it is a little weird at times, but then again, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to let the fact that these were historical people get in the way of me wanting to make this AU. I'm not going to pretend that I don't want to do this when I do want to do this. I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Like you can kind of think of these as caricatures of these people. Plus, all these people are pretty much dead anyway, so it's not like it's hurting anybody. So these are historical figures that are all deceased anyway. So it's not like we're hurting them by writing fan fictions about them and whatever. People are going to do what they're going to do anyway. Aaron Burr, co founder and vice president of the Poetry Club. He also doesn't really know much about poetry, but he's good with the political aspects of the club, such as tracking their budget and what activities they do and participate in. Sometimes he gets jealous of Alexander. Mariah Reynolds, part of the swim team and Alexander's ex girlfriend. She frequently expresses how much she misses him and tries to win him back. But is she hiding something? Margarita, aka Peggy Schuyler, in middle school and tries to find her own identity without piggybacking on her sisters. She also loves going to Starbucks. Thomas Jefferson wants to start his own club but has no original ideas and frequently tries to mess with Alexander's club and plays pranks on him. James Madison, Thomas's selectively mute best friend from childhood who frequently expresses his annoyance at his pranks, is homeschooled due to how frequently ill he becomes. So, yeah, that was just one part of it. And also, I listed some fun facts below. The reason why I described Eliza as not being very good at writing and even disliking it, because that's actually true to real life. Eliza hated writing, but when she was being courted by Alexander, he would badger her to write to him since he was always away with George Washington. But she absolutely couldn't stand writing because she didn't feel confident in her own writing and she wasn't a very well written person, as I guess you could say. And when you think about it, she was exchanging letters with someone who was known for his extremely eloquent and fluid writings. He had a very flowery way of writing. Yeah, I like writing, but I don't like writing. It's that I have ideas for how to write. It's just that the actual writing parts can sometimes stump me. Yep, same, Queen Nemmer, same. The reason why I made James Madison selectively mute in this AU is because he was described historically as not being a very sociable person, so that's why. And the thing about him being frequently ill is not a personal headcanon either, because he was also a very sickly man, as I said earlier. The reason why I made Mariah Reynolds Alexander's ex girlfriend is because I didn't want to put her in the stereotypical role of one of those girls who frequently tries to steal a man from a woman who is also after his affections. I personally didn't want to represent her in such a disrespectful light since I don't personally disrespect her. And I decided to make Peggy a character who is struggling to find her identity since in the musical she's seen either as a joke character or someone to poke fun at. And even though I personally also do that from time to time, I wanted to do her a little bit of justice and write her as a character trying to find her own way in this AU. All right, I'm trying to find the second part. Okay, And before I start reading that, I'm going to work on the Jefferson drawing a little more. But hey, what do you think so far of what I've just told you? What do you think of the AU? Do you think it's a good idea, or what are your opinions on it? Okay. Oh, almost forgot. I got to do the ears. All right. I can't believe I almost forgot to do the ears. Can you believe this? Well, if you have any questions about Hamilton, you can ask me and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Like if you want to know the original roles of all these characters, caricatures, whatever you want to call them, then I will explain it to you. Yeah, and sometimes even liking an AU can help you, maybe it might make you interested in its original source material. Jefferson, honey, why is your hair so hard to draw? Because I'm going off of this image, and that's a really cool way to draw him, but holy cow. Also, in case you didn't know this, I mean, I know you probably aren't curious about this in the slightest, but the reason why in the Poetry Club AU, Hamilton and Jefferson are rivals, and the reason why they don't really get along is because that was actually true to real life. Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson did not get along very well. They were, I don't want to say at each other's throats, but holy shit, I'd be lying if I said that they did not butt heads. Like holy crap. Oh my gosh. I mean, Hamilton was a very hot-headed guy, especially during his younger years. But yeah, of course I'm going to do their relationship justice and write it how I see fit. And I personally take enjoyment out of how the musical portrays their rivalry. It's entertaining, but also concerning. Yeah, Thomas, like the guy who plays him in the musical, Daveed Diggs, you did a great job of portraying Jefferson, but holy crap, your hair is just batshit crazy. It's all over the place. It's like poof. It has a mind of its own. I think Thomas Jefferson was also kind of a creep, like historically speaking. Holy shit, he was. It's mostly because of the whole thing with one of his slaves, Sally Hemings. I mean, I can hardly have beef with Jefferson for being a slave owner because that doesn't make him unique. The fact that Jefferson was a slave owner doesn't make him unique for that time period. Um, but I mean, it also wasn't surprising that he was a slave owner, like, not just because of the time period he lived in, but also because he was from Virginia. Not throwing slander at Virginia, but like, it's a well known fact that like slavery was like everywhere in Virginia. It was generally everywhere in the 13 colonies, but it was especially prominent in Virginia. Like Virginia was back then, Virginia was like the slavery hotspot of the 13 colonies. So far, this drawing is actually looking pretty good. As soon as I finish drawing in his mouth, I'll show you. Yeah, I think that looks good. Thank you. Thomas Jefferson's coming home. Thomas Jefferson's coming home. Thomas Jefferson's home, Lord, he's been off in Paris for so long. This is what he looked like in the musical, by the way. Like, that's the actor who played him. The actor who played him actually played another character in the musical, and that very same character is absent in the second act of the musical because, the actor playing him switched over to playing Jefferson. I'm gonna give him a little bit of a stubble here because in this AU it takes place in a high school, so he doesn't have his full facial hair grown in. He's just got a little bit of a stubble going on. And also, like I said, I don't really like Thomas Jefferson, historically speaking, very much as a person, but his friendship with James Madison is actually something that I respect. Their friendship is just something that I really respect. I also love how they were practically like two completely different people. I mean, from what I understand, they were two completely different people. For one thing, Thomas Jefferson was like really, really tall, and James Madison's like way down here. And James Madison was also known for having a very shy and timid demeanor. Okay, now I'm. Okay, now that I've finished the basic sketch, I'll read some more to you about my poetry club AU. So this is a character. So this next one, Hercules Mulligan. He is a tailor, just like he was in the musical, and historically speaking, he is Alexander's friend. But unlike most of the characters in this AU, he is not a high schooler and is instead a full grown adult man. I know that sounds weird, but if you think about it, historically speaking, Mulligan was around 36 years old in 1776, which was when Alexander came to the colonies, and it was said that around the time he was 19, like Hamilton was 19 and Mulligan was in his 30s. So, like, yeah. So it's not a stretch to make Hercules a full grown adult in this AU, considering he was a full grown adult when he and Hamilton first got acquainted, historically speaking. Plus, it's not always a bad thing for someone to have an older friend. So, just to get this straight, Mulligan is a tailor, just a modern one, obviously, and he is Hamilton's adult friend. So far, that's my basic concept for him. If you want to know something about Mulligan, historically speaking, all I know about him is that Hamilton stayed with him in his house when he first came to the colonies, and that's how they got to know each other. And also, he ended up becoming a spy for the revolution later on. Like, he would smuggle information and to his allies in America to help them be more successful with their fight against the British. The 5 other Schuyler siblings. I don't really know what I'm going to do for each of them yet, and I might have to do more research on the historical Schuyler family in order to decide what I would want for them in this AU. I decided to include more than just the 3 Schuyler sisters that were in the musical for personal reasons. So basically, what you need to know about that is in the musical, there's a song called The Schuyler Sisters, and we get introduced to the three of the Schuyler sisters. Their names are Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy. And even though we only see those 3, there were actually more Schuyler children than that. In fact, I think there were actually 2 other Schuyler sisters that were not in the musical. I mean, obviously, I don't think they were in the musical because they weren't really relevant to the story. I mean, hey, Peggy is in there and she wasn't relevant to the story, which is weird because historically speaking, she and Alexander were actually very good friends. In fact, he was the one who spent time with her during her final moments before she died. So yeah, they were actually really good friends. Because that is the one part that the musical got historically inaccurate, especially the part where Angelica said that her father has no sons, when in reality, that wasn't true. And in fact, he had multiple sons, but only a couple of them survived to adulthood. I mean, if we're being real here, Philip Schuyler and his wife had 15 children, but only 8 of them survived to adulthood. And also, I'm going to skip over this one because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'll probably explain it later. The Curly Hair Squad. This is the official name for the trio consisting of Angelica, John Laurens, and Lafayette. I just find it cool how they all have curly hair, so I just have this headcanon for the AU that they actively call themselves the Curly Hair Squad and that they get matching sweaters to broadcast this to everybody. Peggy and Mariah are not involved in this squad because Peggy is in middle school, and again, she's trying to find her own identity without piggybacking on her sisters, and Mariah is not really a part of their friend group, but doesn't hate them or anything. Yes, he did. Alexander did have a son named Philip. His son Philip was actually named after his father-in-law, Philip Schuyler. So it was his wife's father, his father-in-law. They named their first son after his father-in-law. And Philip Hamilton unfortunately died very young. Oh yeah, well that's because here, I'll try to find a picture of Philip Schuyler. Philip. It's probably because you spelled it wrong. It's not spelled how it sounds. Hi, Khalil. How are you? This was Philip Schuyler, Alexander Hamilton's father-in-law. Yep. That's good. I'm glad you're doing good. So much political shit. So the reason for Alexander and Mariah's breakup. Just for some context on Mariah Reynolds, historically speaking, she was Hamilton's mistress. Yes, I said mistress because, long story short, she came to him. She came to him asking for help. I think in like 1790, because I think their affair lasted from 1790 to 1791. But basically, she came to Alexander asking for help because she said her husband was mistreating her and left her, and she had nowhere else to go. She had nothing to do. She felt like she was helpless, so she was asking for help. So Hamilton offered to give her money and support, as a gentleman would back then. But apparently one thing led to another, and he ended up starting to carry out this infamous affair with her that lasted for a year. And the reason why this affair is known is because he admitted to it. And the reason why he admitted to it in the form of what we now call the Reynolds pamphlet. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So basically, Mariah Reynolds' husband, he knew about the affair. He found out, and he told Alexander, hey, unless you want me to go tell your wife and everybody else what you did, you better pay me good money. And you can keep seeing my wife if you want, but you better just keep paying me. Otherwise, I'm going to go blather about this. So basically, he blackmailed Alexander into paying him money as a compromise to keep quiet about the affair. And this lasted for about a year. And there were rumors going around that this affair was happening, and there were also rumors that Alexander was embezzling government funds. So basically, the rumors were that he was taking government money and giving it to people behind the politicians' backs or whatever. Basically, there were rumors going around that he was doing something illegal. But of course, Alexander thought that if he came forward and cleared his name and aired out his dirty laundry, and he was honest about what really happened and what was really going on with the money, then he would be cleared of any legal wrongdoings or any legal suspicions, because he didn't pay Mariah Reynolds' husband, James Reynolds. He didn't pay James Reynolds any money that belonged to the government. Everything he paid James Reynolds was out of his own pocket. It was only his own money. But, God forbid someone says something about Hamilton. Of course, this is a point that was kind of reflected on in the earlier version of the song Burn, where Eliza says, heaven forbid someone whispers he's part of some scheme. Your enemy whispers, so you have to scream. It's just basically her saying, you don't have to react when someone is saying something. You just need to keep your mouth shut sometimes and not always react just because someone says something that pisses you off, because you make a lot of enemies that way. Like, if you give people a reaction, they're just going to keep picking at you and picking at you. And unfortunately, that was one of his fatal flaws. He was very hot-headed. But basically, he published this set of papers that we now refer to as the Reynolds pamphlet. It's basically him airing out his dirty laundry, explaining in great detail the affair and how, it's just basically him attempting to clear his name by being honest, which is something that he was really good at being. So yeah, that's who Mariah Reynolds was historically speaking. But in this AU, she's Hamilton's ex-girlfriend because I feel like it. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, given what I know about Hannibal Lecter, that it doesn't surprise me that Albert Fish was the inspiration for him. But no, I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that, Miles. Anyway, I'm going to talk about this in the AU now. The reason for Alexander and Mariah's breakup, and just remember, this is for the AU. For this AU, I'm going to personally headcanon Mariah as being a clingy, codependent person when it comes to relationships. And I'm not trying to badmouth her, I'm just saying everybody has their virtues and vices. Unfortunately, Alexander's problem was that he couldn't give her the amount of attention she craved, which in his eyes seemed almost infinite. He didn't hate her or fall out of love with her, but he just found her constant clinginess and need for attention overwhelming and couldn't process it any further because it was suffocating him. So he broke it off with her, which she didn't take very well, and it led to her having a really big breakdown and receding into her shell a lot. But eventually, she decided to try and join the swim team in order to get over her breakup in some way, shape, or form. So basically, she was willing to do anything. We were talking about serial killers on a stream like over a week ago. She made a lot of new friends in the swim team, which was really good for her because having more friends other than Alexander slowly made her less codependent, especially when her friends told her that her constant clinginess was annoying. So hearing it from more than one person let her know that it wasn't a personal thing on Alexander's part, and basically anybody would find someone's overly clingy and codependent nature overwhelming. This also helped her stop hating Alexander and eventually led to her wanting to at least be on friendly terms with him again. And this worked out pretty well considering that Alexander is a pretty nice dude. Jefferson's ex-girlfriend, Sally Hemings. So, just to give you a short explanation on who Sally Hemings was, historically speaking, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but she was one of his slaves. And the reason why she plays a little bit more of a significant role than most of his other slaves is because she wasn't just one of his slaves, she was his mistress. And I think they started hooking up not that long after Jefferson's wife died because I think Sally Hemings kind of resembled Jefferson's wife a little bit because there were some familial ties because Hemings was a woman of mixed race. I can't remember what the term they used back then was. It was a word that started with M, but nowadays I don't think that's a very politically correct term to use. But basically, she was Jefferson's mistress as well as one of his slaves. And it's really messed up considering that, for one thing, she was around like 14. And by the time he impregnated her for the first time, she was 16. And I know I said last drawing stream that back then things were different and women and people in general didn't have very impressive lifespans. So if you wanted to have children, you had to start conceiving while you were still young. But there were even people who back then, people who knew about it. Like, I'm sure some of them were not on board with it. Basically, even back then, there was a certain level of kind of fucked up that people would have found it. And nowadays, people are trying to tell the world that what Jefferson and Hemings had wasn't some kind of secret love affair or forbidden love story. A lot of people attribute what he did to her is what we now would refer to as grooming, which is the use of a variety of manipulative and controlling techniques with a vulnerable subject used to establish trust or normalize sexually harmful behavior. Because when Jefferson was over in France being the ambassador during the war, Sally went with him, and she didn't have to go back with him. She could have stayed, but instead she did choose to go back to America with him. So that leads some people to think that there might have been some level of affection between them. Either that or there was a certain level of manipulation going on there, because Jefferson was in his 40s by the time he and Sally started hooking up. Basically, it just doesn't really paint Jefferson in a very positive light. Even back then, there's something a little bit weird about that, right? There was something a bit weird about that. Hold on, I'm going to check something really quick. Okay. Just making sure the chat wasn't disabled since nobody has sent any messages for a couple minutes. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how things work in the AU, now that you know who she was historically speaking. I just want to apologize in advance for once again picking on Thomas Jefferson, but I can't leave the poor guy alone for a second. I mentioned before that in this AU, Thomas Jefferson wants to start his own club, but he has no original ideas because he's not a very creative person in this AU. He's kind of a hell-raising prankster, if anything, and decides to frequently mess with Alexander and his club, considering that he and Alexander frequently butt heads on a daily basis while they're at school. Neither of them remembers who exactly started it, but as far as they know, they've been rivals ever since they met in middle school. But we're getting off track. Let's talk about Sally Hemings. Oh, okay. Hi, Ronaldo. How are you doing? I'm just talking about an AU. As some people most likely know, historically speaking, she was one of Thomas Jefferson's slaves, as well as his mistress, if you even want to call her that. But most people are uncomfortable referring to her as such, considering how young she was and how old Jefferson was when they started having their quote-unquote affair. And I already went into the tangent about how, age and whatever, so I'm skipping past that. And I did not want to do something with Sally in this AU. I just wasn't sure what. I started to play around with the idea that she could be Jefferson's sister, but that didn't sit right in my head for some reason, even if this is an AU. So I decided to make her Jefferson's ex-girlfriend. She's still younger than him, but at a more understandable level. I would say that Jefferson is around the same age as Alexander in this AU, putting him at 16 to 17 years old. And right now, my basic idea for Sally is that she is 15 to 16 years old. I'm not exactly sure where their relationship started. I'm still planning that part. However, I do have a good idea of what kind of relationship they had. I guess on Jefferson's side of the story, he had some genuine affection for Sally, as some people seem to think that there might have been some genuine affection between them, historically speaking, but most people attribute it to manipulation and not actual affection. So even though I'm not trying to paint Jefferson as an evil person, even in this AU, I personally believe that he was kind of controlling and manipulative to Sally when they were dating. And even though Sally put up with this for longer than she should have, she did eventually gather enough courage and common sense to dump him. Jefferson did try to play it off like he wasn't hurt or angry, but he clearly was, considering how he behaved at home and considering how his grades dropped for a while. I might elaborate on this a bit more, but my basic idea for Sally Hemings is that she's Jefferson's ex-girlfriend, and she's the one who dumped him because he was showing some controlling, manipulative behaviors in their relationship. That's good. I'm glad you're doing good. How Madison communicates. And I mentioned my first post in this. For those of you who read my first post on the Poetry Club AU concepts, you would know that I made James Madison selectively mute because of two things. One, I personally enjoy characters that are selectively mute or are just physically incapable of talking or that they use other forms of communication. Two, James Madison, historically speaking, was not a very sociable person and had a timid demeanor, most likely due to how short he was. I personally think James Madison uses sign language to communicate with other people in this AU, and he does occasionally speak a couple of words, but for the most part, he prefers to be silent. He also has a notebook that he carries with him everywhere to either write or draw out how he's feeling or what he's saying. Not really much else to say. I just feel like I'm going to have a pretty good time writing James Madison in this AU. So that's all I have as far as like my basic concepts for my Hamilton AU go. Oh, here's some Hamilton drawings I made a while ago. Small Lafayette. Oh, look, there's Aaron Burr, sir. The latest I stayed up on a school night. Oh shit. I remember there were a couple times during my school years when I stayed awake all night and I was so freaking tired. Now to work on this drawing of Thomas Jefferson some more. So what do you guys think of my Poetry Club AU? I know that you guys don't know anything about Hamilton, but just let me know your thoughts. Okay, gonna clear some notifications. Oh, there's something going on. Lol, that's funny. I love how nobody is saying no. Thank you, Khalil. I appreciate your kind words. Okay, I'm going to work on this drawing. Jefferson is so extra. Jefferson is kind of low-key terrifying. Well, the reason why I decided to do a Poetry Club AU is because Hamilton was a writer. He was known far and wide for his exceptionally eloquent writing. He was a very, very, very astounding writer. He was a poet in a sense. He was a poet. And he wrote, I haven't read any of his poetry. I did hear this one historian say that he personally doesn't care for his poetry, probably because he knows too much about the guy, which I can understand, honestly speaking. It's kind of hard to appreciate romantic poetry when you know too much about someone, especially someone who literally had an affair and published it for the entire 13 colonies to know. Oh boy. So yeah, I can understand why he doesn't really like his writing, but whatever. I'll probably check it out, but I probably won't understand a word of it because it's like 1700s English speak, and I'm not really a fan of poetry myself. Like, I'm not super big into it, but some of the poetry I've read is actually pretty fun. And I just thought that a poetry club would be the best way to write Alexander and his friends, and of course his rivals slash enemies. I don't know. I just thought it was fitting for the kind of AU I wanted to write. Hold on, I need to look for something. Sheesh, Hamilton, this animatic Jefferson and Hamilton meeting, it's like they just stare each other down with a death glare. Like, seriously, can you guys at least pretend that you don't hate each other? I don't really know. Actually, I don't really know if they hated each other, but they weren't exactly friends. Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, they weren't exactly friends because, well, I mean, come on. Given everything I've just talked about, you can understand. Okay. Okay. Poor Madison. He's so sick. He's just always coughing constantly. Okay. Okay. I think now I'm going to start lining this picture. This is what I have so far, by the way. Thank you, Secretary Jefferson. Jefferson, shut up. Hamilton, you don't have to do Madison so dirty like that. Leave him alone. He's suffering enough. Freaking Jefferson being like, ha 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 ha. I really just gained a new appreciation for the song in Hamilton called The Adams Administration. It's a short song. I mean, if you're listening to the version they actually used in the final cut, it's really short. It's like not even a minute long, I don't think. It's just basically another example of Hamilton being a hothead because after Washington resigns from the presidency, in the musical it says that John Adams, after he became president, he fired Hamilton from his position, and Hamilton published his response saying, "Sit down, John, you fat mother," and then he threw a stack of papers down, even though historically speaking, that's not how it happened. Um, John Adams didn't fire Hamilton. Hamilton resigned from office because at the time that Hamilton resigned, Adams had no power to fire him. There are a lot of things that they do in the musical for like the sake of writing. Okay, Jefferson, honey, I know that I complained about your hair before, but holy shit, it's fabulous, darling. What am I doing with my life? I hope you get that autograph. I love how in the song We Know, they literally just walked in with the intention of destroying Hamilton, and Hamilton just destroyed them. And then later Hamilton destroyed himself. Thomas Jefferson really loved France, by the way. People called him a Francophile. Actually, I think that's something we now call him. To get Hamilton on your side. This is looking good. Sorry, I was just really focusing on the eyes. Like, I didn't want to mess it up. Doesn't even look like anybody's in here right now. Clearly not. Freaking Jefferson. Jefferson being so extra up in this biz. Jeez. Thomas Jefferson, why do you have beef with literally everybody? That's disgusting. Don't want to see that. Okay. Hmm. Is anybody still alive in the chat, or have I just been abandoned? That's good. On my end, it said that there were 0 people in the chats. So, I mean, there were 0 people on the stream. So I just wanted to double check. The system isn't always 100% working. This is looking good so far. Sometimes I feel like people don't care about my drawing streams. Okay, I hope you have fun taking a shower. I know I have fun when I take showers and baths. All right, that's what I got going on so far. All right. Added more detail. Add a little more detail to his hair. Okay. Gonna draw the drawstrings on the sweater. Hamilton just being like, I will fucking destroy you. Okay. I need to pick out a color. Okay. I like this one. I think purple works really good on Jefferson. He's a purple kind of guy. Now that I think about it, I probably should have drawn Jefferson in more like glamorous clothing, but I don't know why. I just thought drawing him in a hoodie and sweatpants was a good idea. I still think it is, but at the same time, given how extra and flamboyant he is in the musical, it would make more sense to draw him in like clothing that says, "Hey, I'm extra." I'm just really concentrating on these letters again. I just want to make sure that I make them look good. This is looking great. This is looking good so far. I love this. Okay. Oh, wait. Forgot one more detail. All right, there we go. All right. Now I'm going to get the eraser. Okay. I'm sorry the stream is not very eventful. I don't really know why more people aren't coming in. Just, whoa, geez. Eraser shavings are so freaking annoying. Okay. All right, I'm almost done erasing the pencil lines. All right. Almost. Almost done. Look at that, so pretty. I love how Alexander has literally the sweetest, most wholesome, well, not most wholesome, but like, I love how Hamilton literally has like one of the cutest relationships ever with his wife and whatever, but people insist on shipping him with Lawrence. It's so freaking funny. It's like, gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just prefer Alexander with Eliza because their relationship is just something that's very near and dear to me. Sheesh, man. I think I'm going to end off the stream early tonight. It doesn't really seem like there's a lot happening, and I don't want to keep the stream going when there's not a whole lot of activity going on. So that's what I got. I'll finish this off camera, but thanks for tuning in, and hopefully I'll be able to get a better night's sleep tonight because holy shit, my sleep schedule absolutely sucked last night. Okay, peace out.